Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers, and the Arizona Diamondbacks have taken 2 out of 3 from the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to talk about some takeaways from that series here in a moment, but we'll start, Jack, with the arguably larger headline from this series, which is what manager Torey Lovullo said at the very end, that he has relieved third base coach Shaun Larkin of his duties as the third base coach. Larkin will continue as an infield coach, so he is still going to stick with the organization. But Jack, obviously, this has been a subject of controversy for a little while now.
Yeah, and it's been a long time coming. And Torey's most recent comments, you could really feel and sense that this was, probably like one more mistake and he was done. That's certainly the way it sounded just recently when he spoke about Larkin. So, on the one hand, it's not a surprise. On the other hand, I guess it is a surprise because, these guys are so slow to make moves like this that when it does happen, you're still a little surprised.
You mentioned Torey sounding recently like maybe one more mistake would kind of put him over the top and force his hand in making a decision like this. We got that mistake, Jack, I think, in the 5th inning of the finale of the series on Wednesday. Alek Thomas leads off the inning with a single. The Diamondbacks are down 1-0 at that point. James McCann hits a double, and Shaun Larkin, with nobody out, sends Alek Thomas home, and he was out by a pretty wide margin. Obviously, that's a really important run at that point in the game, and especially with nobody out in the inning, it wasn't a risk worth taking. And obviously, the Diamondbacks went on to not score at all in that inning. They could have potentially had maybe even 2 runs if you play out the rest of that inning the way things went. And if the D-backs had lost the game on Wednesday, Jack, I mean, it would have been hard not to have Shaun Larkin's decision as one of the biggest reasons that they lost the game.
Yeah, I mean, the outfielder fell down. So that's when he started windmilling, basically. But, he made a pretty quick recovery and he made a perfect throw into the shortstop, who then made a perfect throw home. And, it wasn't a very close play at all. And Torey described that and he just said, look, that's the speed of the game at this level. You can't just react to the outfielder falling down. Life comes at you fast when you're standing on third base in the middle of a major league, in the third base coach's box in the middle of a major league baseball game. The game happens really fast.
That's honestly one of the biggest things I've learned in the Diamondbacks 2025 season, Jack, is just how hard it is to be a third base coach at this level. I think I would be just awful at it, and I do not envy people who have to do it. I think because of how good all of these coaches are at their jobs, we sort of take for granted how quickly things happen in this game, as you were just talking about, and how, these decisions are really hard and these coaches are making them all the time. Obviously, Shaun Larkin struggled at this. I mean, there's no question. It's been a big topic of conversation the entire year. You and I both know Shaun Larkin personally. He was the farm director for the Diamondbacks last season. Have nothing but good things to say about him on an individual basis. But I think it was clear, Jack, as the season played itself out, this role was just not a good fit for him.
Yeah, I kind of had a sense of that talking to him once in the dugout. And I want to echo what you said. And, look, from a fan's perspective and from what the team needs perspective, it doesn't matter that he's a good guy, but he's a really good guy. And he was very, um, I guess the word is enthusiastic about everything he did. He was enthusiastic as a farm director, and he was great to talk to, and kind of plow through what's going on with all the different minor league players. He was out there working his butt off every day with the infielders, trying to get them up to speed and correct some of the problems that they were having. And I think that they have made progress there. So he deserves credit for that. And we were kind of talking about it one day, and he just kind of said, well, the third base coaching part of it, that's a whole different animal. Because I had asked him, I said, how are you doing? And he goes, I'm doing fine. This was a few weeks back, like, during the previous controversy. So I just want to say, Shaun Larkin's a good dude and he works hard, and he was very accountable to Torey. And I think he was very embarrassed that this is the way it went down. But, 18 runners thrown out at home, third most in Major League Baseball, and at least a handful more of guys that should have been sent that weren't sent. He had the yips. He was caught in between. And that's just the reality of it. I'm just going to come right out and say it. My biggest criticism on this is to Torey and to the front office for hiring a third base coach with no experience at the job. Right.
I
I mean,
think
Shaun Larkin.
he was a third base coach in the minors in 2016, I think I
Yeah.
read, but not in the majors. Not in the majors at
Right.
all.
Not in the majors and not for a very long time and not at a high enough level. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, he was a rookie third base coach. They also hired a rookie pitching coach, and they've had problems in these two areas. And they're two very important areas. And, I just think that I don't know exactly how you get the guy enough experience, but, he probably should have been in Reno for a season coaching third base before you put him in that position. Problem is Tony Perez-Chica left, went to Houston. I think they were caught a little off guard by that. Tony got the opportunity to go there, not just to do the same job. I think although he's doing that, but I think he also had some expanded responsibilities. Maybe that was just, wallpaper to kind of, make things look a little bit better. But, bottom line is that they hired a guy without the requisite experience and it was totally exposed. And it probably cost him at least 2 or 3 games.
I'm trying to remember, Jack, if I have ever seen this before. Certainly, we've seen teams let go of a manager during the season, or a hitting coach, or a pitching coach. A third base coach, I don't remember off the top of my head. Maybe there's an obvious case I'm forgetting. I know this would be a very hard thing for us to research, probably, but you've been watching baseball a while, Jack. Do you have an idea of this?
I think the Braves did so just this year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I
there
think
you
the
go.
Braves switched out their third base coach, but it's not common. It's not
Yeah.
something teams generally do mid-season.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's not common at all, and it's odd that it happened twice in 1 year.
That is strange. Now I'm curious more about the Braves situation and what led them down that road. Was it a similar situation where guys are just getting thrown out at home plate too many times? But yes, I share what you said, Jack, about how, does Shaun Larkin deserve some blame for this? Absolutely, to an extent. But when you have someone in a position who just clearly does not have the experience necessary to do the job, then I'm right there with you. It makes me look at the people above him who put him in that position more so than even looking at him himself. And beyond that, Jack, I think another aspect of this was in recent days, we've started to see more reactions from players. There was a moment the other day with Jake McCarthy where he was most of the way to home and then he got a late stop sign, had to slide back into third. I'm not 100% sure that his reaction in that moment was Shaun Larkin's late stop sign, but it sure looked like it was. And there have been some other moments like that. Okay. And there have been some other moments like that as well.
Yeah, Torey confirmed today that there was some player reactions, which were fairly evident. You noticed it on TV in just that split second they showed it to us. Torey said, look, I'm not an idiot. I saw it too. So there were reactions, and it wasn't just Jake. I mean, other players have had the same thing happen. So it's tough. I mean, you got to have a lot of faith in that third base coach that he's sending you, at the appropriate time and stopping you at the appropriate time. And there's clearly was frustration.
Well, despite this news with Shaun Larkin, the Diamondbacks went out there and won themselves a series. They dropped the first game against the Cleveland Guardians, but they came back and grabbed the next two. The finale of this series, they win in 10 innings on a walk-off hit by Adrian Del Castillo. We'll talk about that game and give our thoughts on the series as a whole right after this break.
FT fam, when you're playing in games, you kind of have some stress, anxiety, teammates need something to help. Now it's at your fingertips with Rula.
That's right. Telehealth has been a huge help for millions of people, but it can be time-consuming and expensive to find the right therapist. Rula is on a mission to make this process smoother. And make sure you go to rula.com/Val for more details. They take most major insurance plans, and the average copay is only about $15 per session. Every provider on Rula is carefully vetted and chosen for their expertise. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them on their journey toward improved mental health and overall well-being. Head on over to Rula.com/Val to get started today. After you sign up, they ask you where you heard about them. Please say that FT sent you there to support the show, but also worry about yourself here at Rula.com, RULA.com/FOUL, and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares.
Well, Jack, the Diamondbacks are not exactly known for their performance in extra innings. It has not been a strong suit for them much at all. But today they found a way to win an extra inning game as they come out on top over the Guardians by a final score of 3-2 in comeback fashion, Jack. They were down 2-1, and then in the bottom of the ninth, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. hit a solo home run, and then in the 10th, they were able to get that run with a very softly hit single by Adrian Del Castillo.
Hey, got a runner out there. He was already on third base. You just got to put the ball in play and get it over the infield's head, and you got a really good chance. And he did what he had to do. He got the bat on the ball, which is something that Adrian is sometimes challenged with. I mean, the swing and miss we've all talked about, but it was a clutch hit. It was his second walk-off hit, second time he's done that in his career. It was kind of funny listening to Chris Garagiola say, the first one traveled about 430 feet, and the second one traveled about 140 feet. There's a difference of about 300 feet on it. But, it was a good win. They played a perfect 10th inning, right? The bullpen shut it down. Andrew Saalfrank came in, did a really good job. They got a bunt, and they got Pavin Smith over the third base on a good bunt from Alec Thomas, right? And then, the Adrian Del Castillo came through as he needed to do. So, good times. Great to see them pull that off and allow them to win the series.
Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Jack, is on some kind of a heater right now when it comes to driving guys in. I think I failed to mention earlier he had an RBI single, I believe, in the first inning of this game. And then Lourdes tied the game in the bottom of the ninth with a solo home run, made it 2-2. It was the reason this game went into extra innings. And Lourdes had 3 RBIs the game before as well. Of course, had a massive 2-run single for the D-backs in their Tuesday game. He's really the reason the Diamondbacks won this series, at least one of the biggest reasons. And on the year now, Jack, Lourdes Gurriel is at 71 RBI and is actually pacing beyond where he's been the past couple of years, even though it hasn't been a very good season for him overall.
Yeah, I mean, he had already had 21 RBIs, I think, in his last 21 games or something like that coming into this game, in his last 73 plate appearances. So tack on 2 more today, that's 23. That's since August 2nd. I mean, he's got 23 RBIs for the month. That's pretty good. I think he's on track to put himself in the position to be able to opt out and get paid.
Yeah, I mean, and even just a few weeks ago, that didn't necessarily seem all that likely. I think it's interesting, Jack, that Lourdes Gurriel has outperformed Eugenio Suarez by a very wide margin since the trade deadline, and I think he's also outperformed Josh Naylor, at least in terms of his OPS. I guess if you want to factor in Josh Naylor's 11 for 11 in stolen bases with Seattle, maybe that makes it a little closer. But Lourdes has been a really valuable player, and I remember when we talked about him at the trade deadline as a potential piece to be moved, we wondered about the opt-out at the end of the year, the fact that it didn't seem all that likely that Gurriel was going to opt out, and whatever team traded for him would probably be on the hook for, I think it's $13 million for 2026 as well. And that sort of made him a negative value trade candidate guy. But now, Jack, I mean, if Lourdes continues to go on a nice run here and finishes the season strong, he really could opt out. Maybe this is the final 5 weeks or so that we see of Lourdes in a Diamondbacks uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it half in jest. It's hard to say what will really happen there, but it doesn't take much for a guy that teams feel reasonably confident can give them, 110 OPS plus and 75 to 85 RBIs. Say, okay, I can give that guy 14, 15, 16 million. So, he could edge above. Like, he's not going to get 20 billion a year. or anything like that, but he could secure himself an additional year guaranteed and maybe a few million more on the average annual. That's what I'm seeing. So it's a bit of a risk there for him to do that. Is it worth for the extra year guaranteed and maybe, 3 or 4 million tops above his current average annual? He's going to have a tough decision to make too. I mean, unless he just continues to really go off, for the remainder of the season and really up his numbers to a much greater degree.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think he has a little ways to go still. Even after a very nice game on Wednesday, he's still at a 96 WRC plus for the season, and he's decent out there in left field, but he's not really giving you a ton of value on defense. So if that number isn't at 105, 110, something in that range or higher, I think there's maybe a decent chance that Lourdes does just return to the D-backs in 2026. We'll see what things look like there. Also worth noting in this series, Jack, Corbin Carroll set the Diamondbacks franchise record in triples on Tuesday. He had 2 triples in that game. I believe it was Corbin's 4th multi-triple game this season, which is wild that they've just come in bunches for him at times. He had a good series overall, 4 for 11 with those 2 triples, a stolen base in there as well. And as we've been saying, Jack, the on-base percentage isn't as high as maybe you'd like, but when Corbin Carroll is slugging 559 or whatever it is right now, you can deal with that.
Yeah, and the other thing, other than having 4 multi-triple games, that had only been done 5 other times in Major League history, and also the last time it was done was by Carl Crawford back in 2004, or 2011. So it had been a while. Basically, Corbin and Crawford are the only 2 guys that have done it since integration, since 1940. You got to remember, in the old days, a lot of ballparks, had really weird dimensions where you might be able to get a triple, kind of like Triples Alley in San Francisco. So that's why triples were so much more plentiful back then, because a lot of them had a 430-foot, 40-foot center field or something crazy like that, where any ball got by, they could get a triple off it. One other note, if you look at guys Corbin has a chance to have 20 homers, 20 doubles, 20 triples, and 20 stolen bases. He's, kind of close to all of those, right? He's 4 away on the triples. I think he's 4 away on the stolen bases. Of course, he's already over 20 doubles and 20 homers. That's only been done 4 other times in Major League history. The most recent was Jimmy Rollins and Curtis Granderson. Both did that in 2007. Before that, it was Willie Mays in 1957 and Frank Schulte all the way back in 1911. So, it's pretty rare what Corbin's doing, this combination of power and speed, both in manifesting it in both triples and stolen bases. And he has the opportunity to do something very, very rare.
Corbin is slugging 556 this season, Jack. And last night I was having some fun over on StatHead looking at which Diamondbacks in franchise history have ever done that. Obviously with Corbin, there's a power element there, but there's also a speed element in his slugging percentage, because all these triples certainly would not be possible if he was, Chad Tracy or any of the other players I'm about to name. But yeah, you look at D-backs who have finished with a 550 slugging percentage. Eugenio Suarez this season, if you want to count that. Obviously, it's not a full year of work. Chad Tracy did it in 2005. I think that was 553. Jay Bell did it in 1999. Ketel Marte last year, and then back in 2019. And then Paul Goldschmidt did it 3 separate times in 2013, 2015, and 2017. It's pretty remarkable to me, Jack, that it's not a very... And Luis Gonzalez is the last one. Yeah, thank you. Yep, he's the one. He's the he's the one name on my list that I just forgot to actually list off. Yes, Luis Gonzalez slugged 688 in 2001, so that probably bears mentioning. But yeah, outside of Gonzo slugging 688, when you factor in that Chase Field is not nearly as home run friendly now as it was for most of its history, the fact that Corbin is doing this is really, really impressive in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked about this a lot. His power production is amazing. if he ever combines that with a higher on base percentage, then, Torey talked about, what a beast he is and how much fun it is to watch him. And, he kind of reminded us again, like he's still really young and could still improve. And if he improves that next level, if he finds that next gear to his game, which is getting on base at a higher clip without sacrificing the slug, if that's in there, then you're talking about, a generational player. I mean, he's already borderlining on being that guy. But to sustain, 150 OPS plus or something like that for multiple seasons, he's going to have to find a way to get the OBP up. But in the meantime, boy, this is sure fun to watch. You watch a guy, if you go to the ballpark, he's worth the price of admission, right? You get to see this guy run around the bases. It's a blur. It's the most exciting thing in baseball is a triple.
Brandon Pfaadt was also pretty darn good for the Diamondbacks in this series. He pitched the Wednesday game, 7 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Obviously, Jack, the Cleveland Guardians are not the most prolific offensive team around the league, so you have to factor that in. But this was good to see from Brandon Pfaadt.
Yeah, there were a few balls, like he was giving up some hits early, and his outfield play didn't really help him. But then he really settled in and just got very efficient. And he ended up retiring the side in order his last couple innings. So it was impressive. He did a really good job. Got his ERA under 5 for the year, which is really good news. I mean, he's been trending in the right direction for a while, even though he's giving up a lot of hits. I think I was looking at the month to month, XBA and BA and all of that, and in August his expected batting average was way, way, way below his actual batting average. I mean, the amount of hits he'd given up in August was kind of eye-watering, but a lot of that was some bad luck. Today there was a ball that went into Alex Thomas's glove. He kind of even squeezed the glove, but the impact with the ground forced it loose. So that was kind of a bad break. That run ended up coming around to score. And then there was a ball hit pretty sharply to right field. Corbin tried to do a sliding catch and just looked like he had it, and then he just kind of whiffed on it. And it looked like a play that Corbin usually makes. So Pfaadt could have actually, gotten through this without giving up any runs if he'd just been a little bit lucky and those outfielders were able to convert. Of course, those would have been highlight reel plays, and we would go, whoa, that's fantastic, So, but hey, most pitchers that pitch 7 shutout innings have at least a couple of defensive plays behind them that you go, wow, and they almost pulled it off.
A lot of soft contact from Pfaadt as well. His average exit velo, I know that's not a perfect stat, but that was 85.8 in this game. So it wasn't what we've seen from Pfaadt a lot this season, which is a lot of hard contact, but just kind of trying to find a way to push through it. So also the Guardians really stacked the lineup with lefties. So Pfaadt hardly threw any sweepers in this game. We generally see him focus that pitch against righties, not a pitch he uses much against lefties. So he leaned a lot on the sinker, a lot on the changeup in this game, threw some curveballs as well. He got 5 whiffs on the changeup, which is always a really big pitch for him, especially against lefties. So good stuff all the way around from Brandon Pfaadt. Geraldo Perdomo, as we have here on the screen, also a good series from him, 4 for 12 with a couple of RBIs. Pretty typical stuff given what Perdomo has given the Diamondbacks this season. Jack, if we look at the standings, which apparently is a thing I guess we should do now. I don't know. The Diamondbacks are now 6 games behind the New York Mets for that 3rd wild card spot. The San Francisco Giants have not played good baseball lately. Neither have the St. Louis Cardinals. So the D-backs are fairly close to passing both of those teams once and for all. But, Jack, they still have a little ways to go here before they're truly relevant in the playoff race.
Well, they're going to need to sweep the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, they were swept by the Reds in Cincinnati. They're going to need to really put a dent in the Reds' hopes and knock them back down a rung. Because they're playing tonight. This standings may change a little bit by the time viewers see this. And, the tiebreaker, if you ever want to dream, that still could come into play at some point. I don't think so, but, you never know. So just got to take them one at a time and see what happens there. Also wanted to mention Zach Gallen pitched technically a quality start. He went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs. He allowed 2 homers, 2-run homer, turned out to be the game-winning homer in a 3-1 loss in the first game of the series. But Zach didn't pitch badly. I mean, it was 2 mistakes that got hammered. But overall, I think, 85 to 88 pitches, he said, out of his 91 were pretty darn good, he felt. And he talked openly about his frustration. He goes, look, I got homeritis, as every time I make a mistake, it just seems to leave the ballpark. And so he was open about his frustration with that. But like Torey said, if they'd have scored 6 or 8 runs, everyone would have been talking about that Zach pitched a good game and did what he had to do to help his team win. And then, of course, Eduardo Rodriguez, another game where he seemed to pitch better than his final line. That's a familiar theme with him. I'll let you cover that one, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, he made a bad pitch to Jose Ramirez, which it wasn't really a bad pitch in and of itself. I mean, it was a changeup that was sort of on the outer part of the plate, just above the knees, but it was also an 0-2 count to one of the best hitters in baseball. You just can't put a pitch in that kind of spot, and Jose Ramirez made him pay for it. The other 2 runs Erod gave up were singles. One of them was hit relatively hard, but on the ground. The other RBI single, I think Carlos Santana, was a pretty soft flare into center field. So he limited hard contact. That Jose Ramirez homer was the only extra base hit that he allowed. I thought it was a pretty good step in the right direction for him.
I agree. Geraldo Perdomo, man, the guy just, 4 for 12 in this series, 2 RBIs, a stolen base. Not every game is going to be a highlight reel for him, but, he's just been so consistently good. And it's just stunning how many RBIs he has. I mean, your shortstop is probably going to lead the team in RBIs. Not only is he leading all major league shortstops in RBIs, but he's probably going to lead the team. So, look, we're all saberheads and analytics, and we all kind of dissed on the RBI in our time. But, when you watch the team every single day and you see a guy like Perdomo come up, you really feel pretty confident that he could drop one in there with a runner on second base, that he can drop a ball right in between the outfielders. He does it so often.
While I am skeptical of RBI overall, Jack, I will say that I don't completely dismiss it as a stat, in large part because of players like Geraldo Perdomo, who just genuinely seem to have this knack for coming through in those situations. Perdomo in 2025, if I can find this, is hitting 336, 408, 512 this year with a 920 OPS with runners in scoring position. And yes, I know that these numbers tend to vary a lot from year to year. And you think a hitter is clutch because they had a great year with runners in scoring position, and they come back the next year, they have a 474 OPS with runners in scoring position, and you're wondering what happened to their clutch factor. But Perdomo, Jack, I don't know if it's totally backed up by the analytics with the fact that he still has only been in the league for a few years, but he is good with runners in scoring position every single season. I believe the numbers bear that out, that his numbers with runners in scoring position are significantly better than his overall numbers every year, at least if memory serves. I don't have them right in front of me. But yeah, I mean, he has 81 RBI this season. The franchise record for a Diamondback shortstop is 82, which was accomplished by Nick Ahmed back in 2019. And of course, that took a full season. I think it was 158 games in order for him to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are types of hitters that tend to do better in those situations. And they're going to be contact hitters that have enough juice on the ball to hit line drives. I mean, back in the day, like guys like Tony Gwynn and Mark Grace, they didn't strike out much. They weren't big home run hitters. But, man, you put a guy out in scoring position, they were going to knock him in. And they just did it over and over and over again throughout a whole career. There are guys that are good at that. But it's important to remember when you got a slugger up there, a runner on first base is in scoring position too. The difference is that there are times in a game where you just need that one hit, and that's the guy you hope the lineup rolled around to. If you need a quick 2 runs to get back in a game, you want your power hitter up with a runner on first or second base. But, if the first base is open, then you got a runner on second, the power hitter is going to be pitched around. So, there's a lot of nuance to all of this. Does the power hitter now have to expand the zone to try to get on a ball and drive that run in? That's not his forte. That's not his wheelhouse. You put the guy on first base. Now the power hitter can just go ahead and unload on the pitch that he wants to go after instead of having to expand the zone. So, there's a lot of nuance to all of this. But runners in scoring position are important. They're certainly something that correlate game to game in how many runs the team scores. We see it all the time. We just tend to focus on bad games.
Perdomo in his career is hitting 300, 392, 449 with an 841 OPS with runners in scoring position. That's 542 plate appearances. So that's it's getting up there. Maybe it means something. We'll see if that continues for him.
It's like one of those guys.
Maybe that is the case. Well, Jack and I both are kind of tired of talking about the Ketel Marte situation, but we're going to do it one more time just because Ketel spoke for himself prior to the start of this series. He issued an apology. We're going to talk about that just briefly on the other side of this break. Nothing says summer like long days, clutch plays, and firing off a few bets on the game, all with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you've never bet on baseball before, it's easy. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, new customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Well, Jack, I know you were in attendance for this moment as Ketel Marte addressed the media prior to the start of the series on Monday. He issued an apology for missing the games that he did at the end of the All-Star break. He said that his intention was to come back on Thursday and practice with the team, but he also apologized for not following through and making that happen.
Right. So, I wanted to just address this part because of what I had said personally and emphasized about the point that he went to the Dominican Republic from the All-Star game, with the intention of taking Friday off. So Ketel said that he was planning to be back on the practice for Thursday and play on Friday, and he apologized for not making that happen. So I just felt that was very much a responsibility on my part to clarify to our listeners that that was my question to Ketel. I mean, nobody else asked about those logistics, and I wanted to dig in there. And it was not a comfortable question to go and ask at that point in time, but I felt like a duty and a responsibility to do that and to report on this properly. I would also be remiss to not say that I still have some questions about it, because I looked into the timing. I mean, if he left Tuesday night from Atlanta, it's at least a 3-hour flight down and a 3.5-hour flight down to Dominican Republic. So he wouldn't have gotten in until sometime, in the early morning hours of Wednesday morning. And it's 2,900 miles from the Dominican Republic to Phoenix. So even if he had a direct nonstop charter, you're talking about a 5-6 hour flight. And heading into the jet stream. So he would have had a pretty quick turnaround to make that practice. He would have had to leave Wednesday night, 12 to less than 18 hours after he got in. So maybe he was just bringing his family down to the Dominican. I also followed up and asked him, at the end of the day, because he said that he was, it seemed like he was just confused and not in a good headspace after finding out his house was robbed. And so I followed up and asked him, did he have any concerns for the safety of his family? And he indicated that he did. And he kind of started, he goes, I think what he was trying to say, and it's tough because this is going through a translator, but he was saying, this glass was getting filled up, or the glass was already half full because of what happened in Chicago and the situation with his mother there. And so he kind of tied it back to that. But I think he had some legitimate concerns about the safety for his family as well. And so maybe he needed to secure some things, but he didn't go into a lot of detail there. So anyway, for the benefit of all our listeners and the people that trust us, I wanted to be completely transparent about what I asked and what I was told.
I know Mike Hazen talked about this on the radio. I think it was with Wolf and Luke the other day, Jack. And, he said sort of what you would expect. He very much moved away from any idea that Ketel Marte is the reason that the Diamondbacks sold, or the reason that their season fell apart this year. And I think it's sort of Mike Hazen's job to do that. I mean, certainly no general manager is going to come out and say, like, yes, the reason that we are in a bad position is because this one player did X. It's pretty rare to see a general manager criticize his own player in any form or fashion, regardless of what the player did in that situation. But on the other hand, I think we pretty much all can be on the same page with one thing in this story, which is that making the case that the Diamondbacks are in this position because of Ketel Marte taking those few days off has been a terrible case from the very beginning. I can understand, some teammates maybe not being happy with the way that this went down, but the Diamondbacks won all 3 of those games that Ketel Marte missed. And when he came back, they couldn't win at all, it felt like. And that's really when their season fell apart. So I know there's been a lot of controversy with this, Jack. You and I have read a lot of comments with regard to this situation that we would not want to read on air. But that's something I think we can all agree with, is no matter what side of this you fall on, the D-backs problems in 2025 have always been a lot bigger than, Ketel Marte taking a few games off.
Yeah, it always seemed petty on the part of the players that complained to Nick about this. The thing I found interesting was that Mike came right out and kind of debunked the notion that their downfall had anything to do with him. So it makes you feel like, okay, that didn't come from Mike as far as whatever leaks were coming from the front office. Right. So I wonder, is there any kind of schism in the front office? For some members of the front office to have expressed those concerns. So, I mean, we have however many players express those concerns to Nick, whoever expressed concerns to Nick and to other writers and to Gambo and to Bickley and to everybody. I mean, they all have their own sources and somebody talked to them. The other thing I'm going to say is all this stuff about, between Bickley and Gambo and Nick Picoro and Bob Nightingale, that they're all in cahoots in some kind of big conspiracy. It's kind of ridiculous. It's a little tinfoil hatish. Doesn't mean that someone in the organization or some players didn't have an agenda and they reached out to multiple sources to kind of coordinate some kind of attack. That certainly could have happened, but the notion that these writers, quite frankly, it's a very competitive environment. Everybody wants a scoop. Everybody wants a story. I mean, the notion that Nick and Bob or, Nick and Bickley are kind of coordinating together to, go get Ketel. It's a total lack of understanding of the actual situation on the ground when it comes to the media. It's just wrong. So, I'll say that one more time, let's put that to bed. This situation should be put to bed. It should be put behind. The only reason we're talking about it tonight really is because we hadn't spoken to you guys, since Ketel spoke to the media, and we certainly needed to close the book on this properly.
Well, with that said, let's do that. Let's close the book and move on to our final topic of the day, Jack, which is the Diamondbacks injury updates, which is something we've, of course, been tracking quite a bit the entire season. Jack, it sounds like Gabriel Moreno might be back with this team before too long.
Yeah, he's going to play on Friday unless something goes wrong tonight. Torey outlined very clearly what the plan was. The last box for him to check was to play in back-to-back games behind the plate. Torey was very explicit. He said, I don't want to bring Gabby back here and not be able to start him at least 2 days in a row at catcher. So that was the last box to check as far as building up his stamina. I mean, as of through last night's game, he was 7 for 17 behind the plate with a couple of doubles and a home run. He threw out a base runner. Clearly, he's ready to come back from a skills point of view and recovery point of view and timing point of view and all of that. I will add, I'm really happy to see guys go on these rehab assignments. I've never liked the fact that they don't send them out to Reno for a good 3-4 games a lot during the season, and just do these, continuation camp and ACL games. I think they need to go and play in Reno for these rehab games, or at least, depending on the logistics, go to Hillsborough or somewhere and play in a real game. So that's my opinion on that. So I think that really helps. Anyway, Gabby's playing tonight. He's catching tonight, and then he will come back to the team and be activated on Friday. And so now we have the big question of who's going to go. Someone's going to have to be taken off the roster. There are 3 possibilities. One is that they might option Adrian Del Castillo because he has options, but I don't think they're going to do that based on comments that Mike Hazen made to Steve Gilbert. The other is they would have to DFA either Jose Herrera or James McCann. And, the situation there is Jose Herrera may or may not be the inferior player to McCann, but he's not hit as well as McCann. And McCann gets a lot of props for his abilities to manage pitchers and handle pitchers as a long-term veteran. But he's a free agent at the end of the year. So if you DFA Herrera, I think some other team's going to pick him up. I think he'll be claimed. And then if McCann's a free agent, now all of a sudden, the only backup catcher you have to Gabriel Moreno is Adrian Del Castillo, who still has plenty of defense issues. So I'm not sure how they're going to handle this decision, Jesse. What do you think is the right thing to do? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I know everyone is going to want the Diamondbacks to keep James McCann and then designate Jose Herrera for assignment. Certainly, Herrera struggling offensively is not a new thing this season. He's never produced much offensively at the big league level, and his defensive metrics also have never been extraordinary at this level. We've always heard positive reports about him from Diamondbacks pitchers, his ability to work with them, but he is not exceptional on either side of the ball, certainly. So I can understand people thinking that, but from a bigger picture point of view, I mean, James McCann is, he's going to be a free agent in 5 weeks. And so I don't know if it makes a ton of sense to move on from a player that you could at least have as a depth option moving forward in order to, just have a potentially better catcher for the next 5 weeks in James McCann.
Yeah, tough spot to be in. Honestly, I would have liked to see them give Del Castillo more reps than he's getting, because they got to find out if they can ever use this guy at catcher or if they just have to move him to first base.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the most valuable use of time the rest of the season, regardless of the roster move that's made between McCann and Herrera, if it's one of those guys, have Adrian Del Castillo catch. Make him the primary backup option to Gabby Moreno and see what it looks like. So as you're saying, you have some clarity going into next year about what that position is going to look like. Or maybe the Diamondbacks have already sort of moved on and they're ready to just view Adrian Del Castillo as a DH, maybe a first baseman moving forward. But I don't know if they're quite to that
Let him
point.
catch a few games. So, I kind of thought that's kind of where they were at. And then they let him catch, 2-3 games so far. So, don't be half pregnant about it. If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Speaking of some minor league updates here, Jack, real quick. Daniel Eagen was promoted from High A Hillsborough to Double-A Amarillo, a move that has felt like it could be coming for quite a while now. The Diamondbacks finally made it. Eagen in 19 starts this year with High A Hillsboro, a 2.49 ERA, 132 strikeouts, and 97 and 2/3 innings compared to 41 walks and opponent batting average of 184. I know Hillsboro, Jack, is a pretty pitcher-friendly environment, but even at that level, these numbers are exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, he won July Pitcher of the Month award. He came right back again in early August and won another Pitcher of the Week award. He had a 6-inning no-hitter. Then he came back, and I think he threw 7 innings of, was it 1-run or shutout ball, struck out 11.
7 scoreless with 11 strikeouts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so he's been thoroughly dominating. Quite frankly, this promotion was probably several weeks overdue, in my opinion. But because I think his innings are limited now, he's getting right up against it of how many more innings they probably want him to pitch. This is his first professional season. I think he threw 77 innings at college in his last year of college, and now he's closing in on 100 innings now. So I think that I can't imagine they want to let him throw more than 110, 20 innings. So I probably would have got him to Double-A a little sooner, just to let him face that stiffer competition. And then, that way you have the opportunity to maybe fast track him next year.
Yeah, he's at 97 and 2/3 innings at this point. So you have to feel like he's probably pretty close to the end there. This is a guy the Diamondbacks had just drafted in the 3rd round last season in 2024. So he's made really tremendous progress, might be the best pitching prospect in the organization. It would be very fun to see what this looks like for him in Amarillo. Although, Jack, I do not envy any pitcher who is making his way from Hillsboro to Amarillo. It's a big gap in terms of the quality of players, and it's also a massive gap in terms of the environment that you're pitching in.
Yeah, for sure. Look, it's a tough place to pitch. It's kind of on par with the PCL as far as run environment, at least in many of the stadiums, including that stadium in Amarillo where he's going to pitch his home games. So we'll see how he does. That's the challenge of the league that he's being sent into. But if you can pitch in Amarillo and Reno, you can probably pitch anywhere, as Brent Strom used to say.
Before we get out of here, Jack, I know you wanted to talk about one Hansel Luis, who has rattled off 6 consecutive multi-hit games down in Hillsboro as well.
Yeah, and Matt didn't make it 7.
Really?
7.
Wow, as we speak. Okay.
Yeah, as we speak. He's 2 for 3 tonight. So Hansel Luis has 7 straight multi-hit games. He's upped his batting average to 307, his OPS to 764. He's listed at 6 feet, 170 pounds. He's 20 years old. He's not striking out very much at all, and he's putting the bat on the ball, and he's really coming around. Now, if he can put a little bulk on and just, add a little power to his base, I think he's got 4 home runs. That just a little bit more pop in there, and they might really have something. Right now, he's 14th in MLB pipeline amongst the Diamondbacks' top 30. He's playing mostly second base and third base. He's only played 5 games at shortstop this year, and I think he's 43 games at second base. Yeah, he's at second base again tonight. So, and he's got like 24, 25 games at third base. Look, right now he's a utility infielder profile, but I believe that this young man is going to make it to the major leagues. He could be a nice surprise. I mean, he's been pretty consistently like in the 270s, 280s all year with his batting average. It's been a very consistent number. Like every time I look at him up, that's where he's at. And then all of a sudden this insane hot streak has pushed him up over 300. So, he's coming off a fairly stable base as far as putting the bat on the ball. And I'm really interested to see what he can do going forward.
He's never walked a ton, so that's something that I'll kind of keep an eye on here as he continues to progress. I think for a guy who doesn't have a ton of power, it can be tough if you also aren't getting on base via the walk. It puts a lot of pressure on your hit tool, which, as you're saying, has looked really, really good here recently. Definitely one of the top names to keep an eye on here in the coming weeks as this 2025 season in the minors finishes off. Jack, I guess we could round things off with Kason Cunningham, the Diamondbacks' first pick in this most recent draft. And he finally got out there on a baseball field in the minor leagues. He notched his first career hit, but it wasn't all pretty for him in his first professional game either.
Yeah, he had a tough night. He went 1 for 5. He had 3 strikeouts. He left 5 runners on base. And perhaps more importantly, he made 3 errors in the game. Back-to-back throwing errors that led to a run, and then later a fielding error that also led to a run. The Rawhide made 6 errors in the game and allowed 4 unearned runs. So it wasn't just him. But, it wasn't the best debut you'd want to see from your number 1 draft pick, but it's the very first game for a teenager. So, we'll give him a break here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, thank you to all of you for sticking with us through what has turned into a relatively long episode of Snakes Territory. But hey, we love to ramble on about baseball around here. It's what we do. Thank you to everyone for being here with us. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Drop a like on this video and leave a comment. We would love to hear from you there. You can follow us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman over on Twitter. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. If you're joining us on an audio-only platform, we'd love it if you would leave us a rating and review. And Jack does a great job covering the Diamondbacks over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. You can find his work at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Be sure to do that. Thank you again to all of you for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.